Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Veterinary Business Podcast, your ultimate resource for developing a successful veterinary practice and career. I am Naren Arul Raja, the founder of the Veterinary Business Podcast and one of the co-hosts. On this podcast, we bring you insights and expertise from industry-leading doctors, experts, and thought leaders. We cover a wide range of topics, including practice management, marketing strategies, leadership development, HR best practices, and much more. Whether you are a practicing veterinarian, a practice owner, a practice manager, or a student studying to be a veterinarian, this podcast is tailored to help you navigate the challenges and opportunities in the business of veterinary medicine. Every listener of this podcast is welcome to visit the website veterinarybusinessinstitute.com for additional resources, tools, and support to support your growth. And remember, you can also subscribe to our podcast on iTunes, Google Play, Spotify, and other popular podcast platforms. Today, I'm excited to talk to Dr. Cheryl Good, Chief Veterinary Officer at the Bridge Club. Our topic is client retention and access to care. And we are going to be talking about the utilization of telemedicine in veterinary medicine. Let's jump in. Before we get started, Dr. Good, why don't you take a minute to tell us a bit about yourself? Who are you? How did you get into veterinary medicine? Tell us your story.
I don't know if we have enough time for all of that, but I'll try. So I'm a small animal practitioner in Michigan, in the United States, and I've had a 35-year career so far. And I say so far because I have just recently retired from my day job, if you will, as the chief veterinary officer or chief veterinarian at the practice that I used to own, that I built. I had sold it a couple of years ago, but I got started in veterinary medicine as a young child, just loving animals, saying I always wanted to be an animal doctor. It's the same story for so many of us who love animals and who got into this career. But I went to school at Michigan State University and became a small animal practitioner in Michigan, in Dearborn, Michigan. Worked for someone else for about 7 years, and then decided that, I would like to own my own practice and treat my team a little bit better than my boss had treated all of us. I was very much of the thought that if you have a happy, healthy team, that is gonna, pass on to the clients to make our clients happy and healthy and just helps, the whole atmosphere of the practice and how you're able to take care of your patients. So I was able to build my own practice. I purchased a practice back in 1995. And then by 2003, we outgrew our tiny little building and we were able to build a larger building and move in 2003. And then, like I said, I am recently retired from that practice, but of course, very involved with the veterinary industry in many different ways, committees, boards, and with the global committee too, because I'm on a WASAVA board, the World Small Animal Vet Association.
Thank you. I have two follow-up questions on your background. I mean, I'm kind of starting to move into your phase in the sense my kids are grown up. My youngest is about to go to college. So my wife and I, we are like, what do we do with our lives? Because all this time we saw ourselves as like caregivers. Like my mom was living with us till like a couple of months ago, and of course our kids. Now all that is changing and the kids don't need us anymore. So how did you make that transition as you went through life? Where, as a mom or, family, how did you kind of navigate that?
So I remember, thinking to myself, when I was young, I didn't even have thoughts of marriage and children. Of course, I knew that probably would have happened, but my whole thought was, I'm a veterinarian. I'm going to be a veterinarian, and that's all I'm going to do, right? But of course, I got married. I have 3 children, and so as I was practicing, I still made my children and my husband and my family, a big part of my life, and made sure that, I was paying attention to them, hopefully as much as I was paying attention to my patients and my clients. Of course, as they grew older, I don't feel that they didn't need me anymore, just in a different way, right? Because of course when the children are living with you, they really depend on you 100%. But then as they move on and go to, college or find jobs, they still depend on you to be that backup, to be that listening ear. So yes, you're not as focused on their day to day, right? But you're still a parent. And now, I also my mom didn't live with us, but she had cancer the last couple of years of her life. She passed 2 years ago. And it was really at that time when I said, I really feel I need to step back from the day-to-day private practice life. I need to spend even more time with my family. And in the meantime, my children were getting married, and now each kid has a kid. So I'm a grandma. So I wanted to spend more time with the family, but never did I want to stop being active in the veterinary industry, because that is my passion. So I wanted to be able to, give back, if you will, by helping with animal welfare. And, I have a big passion for helping, our clients to be able to have, get care for the animals and in any way possible. And of course, one of my huge passions now and in the past several years has been telemedicine. And I'm on the Veterinary Virtual Care Association board, which was one of the founding members of that particular board to, help our veterinarians and our veterinary technicians really understand that can, help practice and help our clients.
That's brilliant. Thank you. So what I'm hearing you say is you really took some time to think about what's important to you in that stage of your life. And then, of course, the answer was, having more time for kids, grandkids, family. And then, of course, going back to what you're passionate about as a little girl, helping animals, but hopefully doing it in a way that's very impactful, not necessarily just as a practice owner, but in a much larger role, like as a leader, as an influencer, as a a person who's kind of charting the path in terms of like new ideas and new ways of doing things, like telemedicine, for example. Do you think about your time in any way? Like, do you say, I'm going to give so much of my time here, or is it just fluid? It just, like these are the two big things I care about, and then you just.
Yeah, for me, everything's pretty fluid. I've never been one to structure, my time in that way. I always, and some people maybe thought that I was doing too much at once, but it just always seemed to work. I just, I'm just available for whatever needs to happen.
How do you give time to yourself, like self-care, whether it's, exercise, eating healthy, traveling, just taking a break? Is that something you plan for and like put into your calendar, or you tend to ignore that?
No, actually, I used to not plan for it, but no, I'm a big foodie, if you will. I love food. I love drink. I love getting together with friends and family in that way. And I love travel. My parents instilled this love of travel in me since I was a young child. They took us all over the United States. They took us sometimes overseas. And I do have relatives all over the world. So relatives and now friends, being in the global veterinary part of the global veterinary community. I have so many friends all over the world. So that's one of the things I'm really excited about in my, I guess, semi-retirement, if you will, is doing more travel. And of course, with traveling, you do sort of have to plan for that, right? It's not something that you could, I guess I could do it spur of the moment now that I'm retired, but I also have a commitment to one of my grandchildren that I babysit her twice a week. So that I have to plan if I want to just drop and see ya, go travel somewhere.
That's awesome. Thank you for that. Let's just jump into the topic, which is client relations and access to care. Of course, we're going to touch on telemedicine in the context of that. What do you feel is one of the most difficult issues plaguing pet owners today?
Well, you just said it, access to care. At this time, and it's not just I'm in the United States, so, so many of my, colleagues and team members, it's hard because there seems to be a shortage. There is a shortage of veterinarians in practice. There's a shortage of veterinary technicians in practice in the US, but I'm also hearing the same all around the world. I heard from a veterinarian in Australia, they don't have enough veterinarians. I heard from a veterinarian in London, same thing. So so that's one thing, is that we don't have enough bodies, good bodies in the field to be able to take care of all of the pets. And since COVID, the number of pets in households has, gone
Doubled.
crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's a problem. And because of that, the biggest problem in my mind is access to care. How do our clients, how do people find the way to get care for their animals?
Yeah.
Right now, the practice that I was, working at, that used to be my practice, we were booking out for normal routine appointments about 3 or 4 weeks. I'm no longer practicing there, so they went from 3 to 2 doctors, and I'm sure they're booking out even farther for routine appointments. They have a few emergency slots available. It's a day practice, not an emergency practice, but it's so difficult to be able to get all of the patients in when you need to see them, hands on.
Right. You're very creative. So let me just throw a kind of a real life situation at you. So we own Merlin. He's a Sheltie. He's 10 years old. And there's been 3 or 4 times where there's something lying on the floor. He eats it. And then my daughters go nuts and take them to the emergency. And it's a really, really painful process. Usually you're waiting 3, 4 hours, waiting in the car. They won't even let you in because they'll call you, will sit in the car outside. So that's one case. And then he had some kind of a health issue where there was some bleeding in his nose, and nobody could find out for like 3, 4 times. We went to 3, 4 veterinarians. And finally, they ran a bunch of tests and told us he has Cushing's disease. And now I guess he's getting medications for certain things, for pressure and Cushing's disease. It's really tough. I mean, not tough, but it's not very inconvenient. It's very like, you just stressful, like this whole experience as a pet owner. So how do you think some of your ideas could help? Like in those 2 examples or 2 situations that I just shared. I mean, for example, telemedicine, for example.
Yeah, so I think that telemedicine, any type of, teletriage, telehealth, those things are so important because, in your case, where, say your baby picks something off the floor, and you want to just go rush to have the baby seen. Well, or any other circumstance, you could, either phone a telemedicine, company, teletriage company, or if your veterinarian had a telemedicine app, which is what we, at my practice, we had a telemedicine app where you could text, and say, this is the problem, is this something I need to worry about? And then you could engage, whether you're engaging with, a veterinary technician, or you're engaging with someone else in the practice or someone else in the company who, can guide you through all the questions that you have and put your mind at ease. Either, yes, you should go to the ER and wait those 3 or 4 hours, or no, here's some things you might be able to do. And if that doesn't help, then, you would need to go and do an in-person visit.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. I think he was not even a baby anymore. He was like a big dog, but still, my kids were going nuts because I guess they didn't know. Like, it's just the unknown. One time he hit a door, so they were afraid there's going to balloon inside his, and maybe it was. So maybe that was a real problem. But and then he would eat 2 grapes, 3, certain things that he's not supposed to, and kids would think, oh, he's going to die, and anyways, they are so fond of him, so they'll drop everything. And so I guess it's nice I agree, that makes a ton of sense. Like having somebody to talk to, somebody who knows stuff. I mean, right now we just rely on Google, but nobody trusts Google, even though Google says, no big deal.
Yeah,
but we don't
you
trust
have to
it.
yeah, you have to be careful when you're Googling because you
Yeah,
don't know if you're getting an accurate portrayal of the problem, right? And it could make you
exactly.
even more nervous, more
Yes.
upset, right? Thinking
Because usually they'll be like,
all
oh,
these
except
crazy
for
things.
these situations. Oh, oops, we don't know what that is.
Yeah. And just one example for me, and this was not, you know, on the other side, the veterinarian and the veterinary technician should be able to be paid for their expertise, right? They shouldn't just, um, you shouldn't be able to just call willy-nilly and be able, because they're so
Yeah.
busy, right? And get answered. But just one example, I have just a friend of mine, and I'm totally, happy to answer calls or texts. They called because they were just so frantic. Their dog ate some chocolate,
Right.
and they just didn't know, is this something I have to go to the emergency for, right? And so I was just very quickly able to do a calculation with this very large dog who ate a very tiny bit of, and thankfully not baker's chocolate because that's, high in chocolate, the theobromine. But a very large dog ate a very tiny bit of chocolate. So I was able to let them know this shouldn't be a problem. You don't have to go to the emergency. The baby may get an upset tummy, might vomit, might have a little diarrhea, but it's not going to be a severe issue. So you can just, watch them. So in those
Right.
kinds of situations, it's good to be able to, certainly um, be able to call, either your or text, your own vet who may have a telemedicine, part of their practice or a telemedicine company.
And these kind of questions could be answered by a tech, right? You don't need a
Oh yeah.
veterinarian like
You
dropping
don't
in.
need a veterinarian to
Yeah.
answer that question for sure. And
Right.
it's very important. Um, another great way for maybe some of the technicians or and veterinarians to be able um, to practice would be in these kinds of situations. If maybe you want to be a stay-at-home mom or a stay-at-home dad, but you still want to practice, veterinary medicine, either as a veterinary technician or a veterinarian, you could, do this type of work without having to go into the hospital. And I'm not saying that, I'm certainly not saying that there isn't a need for hands-on, because of course you can't diagnose so many things without being able to lay your hands on the patient to be able to, do blood tests and urine tests and all of those kinds of things and take x-rays. So, there is a need. That is the gold standard for diagnosing many, many things. But, you could send a picture of, oh my gosh, my dog has a lump. What is this? And it turns out to be a tick. That could be a picture, right? You could send a picture in. You don't have to bring your pet in for something like that.
I mean, from my perspective, the 4 hours, the $400 for a non-issue, I bet even telemedicine is $100. It's still worth it. I mean, you know what I mean? It's
Yeah.
priceless just because the amount of time and the everything else you go through. The second example I shared with you, which is he was sick. He was, something with blood was coming out of his face, and then we had to go to multiple doctors to figure out what was going on. And these, I guess, regular doctors, they were not specialists, so they didn't know what was going on. So they would just, I don't want to say waste a lot of time, but we were just spinning our wheels, and there was no guidance. How would you solve that problem? Do you see that happening a lot with like most practices, or is it maybe ours is a unique case and maybe it's not
Well,
shouldn't have happened?
yeah, there are, medicine is not an exact science. And the presentation of bleeding from the nose, Cushing's disease wouldn't be the first thing that I thought of either, right? Um, so there's a lot of things that run through a veterinarian's mind when they're presented with an animal that's bleeding from the nose. So, certainly taking that baby to a day practice, like what mine was, the first veterinarian, if you will, to do a really good exam, a thorough exam, do blood work to make sure that the dog doesn't have a bleeding problem. And then from there, at least in my hands, if I'm not able to make a diagnosis, then I do refer to a specialist. So, and a specialist in this case would be like an internal medicine specialist, that they may have to do more in-depth testing. They may even have to do, scope, where they have to scope the nose or do a CT of the nose to find out why we're bleeding. Cushing's disease is usually diagnosed by a blood test. So
but it's a special kind of a test, right? Usually nobody would think of running that test.
Well, if I would have thought about running a Cushing's test if they're showing symptoms like, drinking a lot, peeing a lot, panting a lot, losing hair in certain areas, getting a big pot belly. Those are the common signs.
Right.
But if, and we take blood pressures, if the blood pressure was elevated, that could give us an idea, that we have bleeding from the nose and the blood pressure is elevated. It could be Cushing's. We better check that. So we do check for Cushing's disease in our practice, but again, bleeding from the nose is not a common sign. So it may not be, the first vet may not have thought of that, and they would have had to send you to a specialist.
And the big part of this is also educating the parents, right? The pet parents, because a lot of times we had no idea what's going on. Doctors typically don't explain why they are doing what they're doing. So they're like, you feel even more lost. I mean, even when you rush that dog because he ate chocolate, it's because you don't know what you don't know. And
you really have to. Client relations is so important, because your clients are those pets' parents, right? They care for them like they're their children. And so you have to be able to have a good rapport and be able to communicate with them in a way that they understand. And that's really, at least when I was in school, they didn't teach us how to be able to communicate, to build those relationships. So I feel, at least in my case, I'm a people person, and I'm very hopeful that I feel that I was able to create those relationships by communicating with my clients in a way that they could calm themselves and really listen to what I had to say. Because you can't just throw big words at people. They're not going to understand all the big words. You have to be able to explain them in such a way that they will understand. And if you have a client who's very anxious and very upset about what's happening with their patient, maybe a third of what you're saying is going to get through to them. So, and you can, if you're really looking at them, you can, that they're not getting it. But to be able to then follow up with them, the next day or the day after, to, see how they're doing, see, how, if you've made a recommendation for giving medication, see how they're doing with that. Because if they aren't able to give medication, then that pet isn't going to get better. And then they're going to go somewhere else because the pet didn't get better. But that's also something a veterinary technician could do, the follow-ups, right? And veterinary technicians are great at talking with clients. Like some clients will talk to the vet techs even more than the veterinarians themselves.
Thank you. So you talked about access to care. We talked about education. We talked about, telemedicine. They're all kind of, part of that, right? So how can the veterinary community help?
Well, I think we just need to be open to providing more of these things for our clients and recommending more of these things like telemedicine, teletriage. And, maybe I have a friend who is a traveling technician, and she'll go into people's homes and help them with treatments and that kind of thing. So just, I guess, opening up our minds to other possibilities, to be able to help our clients. A lot of people can't come into the clinic, at certain times. Either they can't drive, or they're sick, or they live too far away, or the dog is too mean, or or the cat gets crazy, and it's difficult for them to come into the clinic. So there's a lot of different ways in which telemedicine, teletriage, telehealth can help in that way. I think that's one of the biggest helps to access to care.
Thank you. You talked about telemedicine a lot, and you gave some specific examples of how it could help. For example, triage, right? Like you can triage a lot of non-urgent situations that could be handled without a visit to the doctor. You talked about possibly follow-up. So perhaps you could use telemedicine for those follow-ups. A tech could follow up and make sure things are going well. It doesn't have to be a doctor and doesn't have to be a visit. Could be maybe a check-in, right? And a lot of this could be done through text, through phone calls. Any other ideas to use telemedicine to improve client relations?
You could actually kind of dabble in this a little bit. The veterinarian or the veterinary team could actually host, and this goes along with education, host, Zoom calls to educate clients about how to clean ears and put in ear medication, how to trim nails, how to, even talk about behavior, right? Because behavior issues is a very large part of concerns for our clients and for the patients. So using not necessarily telemedicine, but a tele platform, if you will, to be able to educate our clients. But with telemedicine, in my hands, I was able to relieve some of the appointment burden on my practice by taking on some of those calls that came in as telemedicine appointments. So for an example, my pet has this rash. I'm really concerned about it. They won't stop itching. I want to bring them in right now. What can I do? We can turn that into a telemedicine appointment where, we guide them to because we used an app, a telemedicine app as a platform. We guide them there. They request a consult. And then in between seeing in-person appointments, I was able to, take on quite a few telemedicine appointments because I'm texting back and forth, and they send me pictures of the issue. I talk about, how is the baby doing generally, and then I key in on the issue, and then I can, tell them all the different things that could be going on. Maybe we have fleas, maybe we have an allergy to something, maybe we have a cut, that's causing this. And then, as a veterinarian, if this is my patient anyways, at least in Michigan right now, we can't establish a veterinary client-patient relationship over telemedicine, but that's another story that would take too long to talk about. But this is my patient, so I can recommend medication, explain how it works, and then have them come into my practice and pick some up and get the baby started on something that help with itching, something that help with the rash, and then say, okay, we can either follow up here in a few weeks, or we can schedule you an in-person exam in a few weeks to follow up.
Brilliant. That makes a lot of sense. I know we can talk about laws and everything else, but perhaps let's not get into it.
Yeah, not today. Not today.
How can telemedicine improve wellness and well-being?
In my opinion, I was able to do telemedicine wherever I was, right? So I didn't restrict taking calls to the time of day when my when the business was open. I would take telemedicine calls, if, I could be sitting at the hairdresser place, getting my hair done, and I can answer my phone, because I can text. I'm sitting there getting my hair dried and I'm texting back and forth with a client, easing their, mind about what's happening. It's just, to me, that was a way, it made me feel good helping my client. And then they were able to get me on a Saturday when they wouldn't have been able to get me any other time. But you can, a lot of people are thinking, well, you shouldn't be available all the time. Of course not. I wouldn't, if I was going to be busy doing something, then no, I would not answer a call. But you can set your schedule, right? For the for the vet tech and the vet who, need, want to be taking appointments, off hours from the routine hours of the day. And because they want to, be able to take care of their kids, but maybe they want to see patients, telemedicine patients from like 7 in the evening until 11 in the evening, then they can set their own schedule. So I think that improves wellness because they can have family time, and then they can have, when they need it, right? Not they wouldn't have to work the normal 9 to 5. They could be with their family, especially with little children.
Thank you so much, Dr. Good. I really enjoyed this conversation about client relations and access to care. Of course, the importance of telemedicine in veterinary medicine. I really appreciated our conversation. Of course, I appreciate you as a human being and for what you do to the profession. I also want to take a minute to thank our listeners. We appreciate each and every one of you. We cannot do what we do without you. If you like our podcast, please share it to colleagues and friends on social media. Also, please don't forget to leave a review for us on your favorite podcast platform. Could be iTunes, could be Google Play. Your reviews will help other doctors and practice owners find us. Until next time, keep striving for excellence and making a positive impact in the lives of your patients and pet parents. Wishing all of you an amazing week ahead. Thank you.